At International IDEA, we are celebrating International Democracy Day. There's a lot to celebrate, but there's even more to strive for. This is not an easy time for democracy. Democracy was facing severe headwinds even before the COVID-19 pandemic arrived. The challenges are even starker now. At this time, it is essential that we remember the reasons why democracy matters. Articulating a persuasive case for democracy is essential if we are to keep at bay the authoritarian temptations that are proliferating around the world. The good news is that the case for democracy remains strong. And here, I would simply like to remind ourselves of three arguments out of many, which in my view amount to a powerful set of arguments for the value of democracy. The first one is an argument that happens to be crucial in the current pandemic. To a much greater degree than any other political system, democracy allows for the correction of policies. This is a function of its allowing the free circulation of information, but also the possibilities for collective action built into the system, and the transient nature of democratic political power. In a democracy worth its salt, we all know that we'll have the chance to change government and course every 4 or 5 years. Rooting for authoritarian systems is like going to a high-stakes casino. You may strike gold and end up with Lee Kuan Yew, but you may not be so lucky and end up locked into the room with Idi Amin, with no possibility for correction. Correctability matters. The second argument is an empirical one that comes from the Global State of Democracy report published every 2 years by International IDEA. Democracy matters for key tenets of development. It matters in particular for gender equality. When we classify the 162 countries covered by our report into democracies, hybrid regimes, and authoritarian systems, and examine the performance of each group when it comes to gender equality, the disparity that we find is truly remarkable. Whereas only 3% of democracies do really poorly when it comes to gender, 10% of hybrid regimes, and fully 50% of authoritarian systems do. This is important in its own right, but there is more. We know full well by now that sustainable democracy runs through gender equality. Therefore, if we stand any chance whatsoever of achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, it is incumbent upon us that we protect democracy. Sustainable development requires sustainable democracy. The third argument is simply that to a greater degree than any other political system, democracy treats us like something more than underage creatures that need to be told what to do. In doing so, it respects our agency and our inherent dignity. To those out there that are keen to follow the mirage of order provided by some authoritarian regimes, and that are willing to discount democratic institutions as dispensable luxuries in the quest for material well-being, I've got one answer for you: Hong Kong. For some time now, the people that are bravely demonstrating in the streets of Hong Kong, also in Belarus, are showing that, as the French writer Antoine de Saint-Exupéry memorably put it, humankind is not merely a herd that expects to be fed. What is in crisis today is not the case for democracy, but rather the idea that the spread of democracy is inevitable. The truth is that there's nothing inevitable about the advance of democracy. The notion that all human beings are endowed with equal dignity and with the same right to participate in collective decisions. the notion that political power ought to be limited if it's to remain legitimate, the idea that the best protection for human dignity is not tribal bonds, but the existence of a body of rights protected by law, in the face of which we are all equal. All of those are very new ideas that in many respects swim against powerful tides in human nature. Inequality, the exercise of raw power, and allegiance to tribe and to those who are and look exactly like us are the historical norm. We should always remember that the spread of democracy is an enormous victory against dark forces in human nature. Now, all those ancestral forces are rearing their head again in different places. The preservation of democracy demands a lot from us every day, lest we let the jungle grow back. This is the twilight struggle we have in our hands. As the call to defend democracy that IDEA published states, we need to muster the courage and build the global coalitions to prevail, knowing full well that while the values we defend are eternal, our victories are always transitory. Now, more than ever, we must dare to make the case for democracy with conviction and with a sense of urgency. It is a case that has not lost 1 ounce of its power to inspire and give hope and light in this time of darkness.